About ready to get started. Let everybody kind of get to their seats. Okay, welcome to our April 30th work session. I'll call our meeting to order and turn it over to David Cook.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. The first thing I'm going to do this afternoon is ask Fernando to introduce our new interim director of neighborhood services. Fernando?
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mayor and Council, last week, we accepted Victor Turner's resignation as our Neighborhood Services Director. We want to thank Victor for the many contributions that he made to the city of Fort Worth and our neighborhoods during his 4.5-year tenure. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Amy Connolly for filling in during the past several weeks as acting Director of Neighborhood Services. But we're here principally this afternoon to introduce to you someone whom some of you may already know, Ms. Casey Bess, who has agreed to serve as interim Director of Neighborhood Services during the next several months while we conduct a national search for a permanent director. Casey is a star of our organization, and I think everybody who knows her will agree with that sentiment. She began her career working roughly 14 years with various private sector and municipal employers, came to work for the city of Fort Worth 11 years ago, and has worked with distinction in several departments, budget, fire, parks, and most recently, human resources, where she has served as assistant director. I can tell you, when the city manager's staff convened to discuss a possible interim director, it took us approximately 20 seconds to reach consensus on Casey Bess, because everybody who knows her understands how capable she is. She is particularly good at managing budgets, at solving problems that seem to be insoluble, and at building relationships. And those are skills that are vitally needed today in the Neighborhood Services Department. She comes to us with a business degree from UT Austin and an MPA from UT Arlington. And perhaps most impressive of all, she and her husband have 4 children, ranging from 3rd to 10th grade. I have no idea how she does it, but I'm delighted to introduce you to Casey Bess.
Well, way to set the bar high, Fernando. Thank you for that. I appreciate the support. I do appreciate the support of the city manager's office in allowing me this opportunity. I'm excited to get to work with the neighborhood services development team, neighborhood services department. Amy Connolly has been wonderful in helping guide me around and fill me in on everything that they're doing. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to being a better resource to our residents, because they do a lot for our residents. And I would be remiss if I did not thank my previous boss, Deanna Giordano, for allowing me this opportunity. Holly Moyer and the team that are stepping up to take on my duties while I fulfill this role. So thank you all.
Thank you, Casey. Next are informal reports. The first informal report is on our call center 1234-2311, and Sharon Gamble is available if there's any questions.
Any questions from the council? If not, thank you, Sharon, for all the good work
Sharon,
you
thanks
do.
for doing that.
Yes.
The next informal report is a request for proposal for a third-party administrator for the city's self-funded group medical benefit plan. And Deanna Giordano is available if there are any questions. And there's also a change, right? Deanna, tell us what that change is.
So I'll share with you the informal report here is that we are conducting an RFP for the city's group medical benefit plan. And so the change is we posted that RFP on April the 15th, and it will actually close on May the 16th, not May the 9th. And part of that is to allow all those that are interested in providing bids to actually analyze all of our claim data and model it with their CPT codes and all of the other applicable information so that we get good comprehensive information related to the competitiveness of those that are interested in bidding. Thank you.
Thank you. The third informal report is on Senate Bill 2038, which is about the release of area from our ETJs by a petition of the landowner or resident. And DJ Harrell is available if there are any questions. Moving on. The final informal report is TCEQ air quality permitting process and the potential city role in air quality monitoring. And Cody Wittenberg is available if there are any questions. Cody, come on up.
Jody, thank you for putting this IR together for us. Could you briefly walk through it for everybody?
Absolutely. So there's three main sections to this particular IR. The first piece is really centered around air quality permitting through the TCEQ. So the TCEQ is the state agency that provides permitting for all air facilities in Texas, and that includes the one in Fort Worth. And so whenever an applicant makes an application to TCEQ, it undergoes a couple of different steps. One is a technical review and the other is an administrative review. And during that process, after they confirm that the application is complete and it completes that administrative review, that's when individuals can schedule a public meeting or make comments on those applications as that works through the process. The second piece really focuses on regional air quality. And again, TCEQ is the responsible agency for providing the regulatory monitoring across the region. There's a regional network that you can access online, certainly to view the different types of parameters that monitoring network is looking at. And it basically talks about two key challenges in North Texas. One, of course, is ozone, and the other is particulate matter, specifically PM or particulate matter 2.5. And it also discusses the various dual standards for ozone that we're currently under. North Texas is in non-attainment for ozone and could be in non-attainment one day for particulate matter. And then the final piece is just talking about a different type of monitoring, which we sometimes call community-based monitoring. And as we move into FY25, we've certainly heard from the community about a request or to consider community-based air quality monitoring. So we're currently looking at different grant funding that may be available and working with different partners to understand the capacity that's in that market.
Thank you for that. I will echo the community's concerns about monitoring air quality, and so I'm completely supportive of any efforts that we put forward to do that.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Cody, I have a couple of questions for you. When you talk about community-based monitoring, are there opportunities for members of the general public to make application for those? And if so, where is the training? And the other involves the feeling of helplessness that many felt after my council peers, made us all understand there are some applications that can be made but cannot be fought. I want to also acknowledge the mayor for standing with Councilmember Blaylock recently in terms of, saying no, even though the powers that be could say yes. So can you talk about the helplessness and the public in terms of what they can acquire?
Absolutely. So the first part of that is really focusing on the sensors that may be utilized in that community-based network and the access to those. There's a lot of sensors out there that individuals can purchase on their own from the free market. And there's a wide range of the different types of parameters. I sometimes refer to it as a Swiss Army knife, as a monitor or a sensor with different types of blades or gadgets tied to that. A monitor is very much similar to that. It may have an ozone sensor, it may have a particulate matter sensor, and you can build those and structure those the way that you want. So we'll be working to get more resources out on our website that help everyone understand the great variety of sensors that are out there. And in terms of the helplessness, we also understand that some of the state regulations that exist and even federal regulations that exist around air quality permitting can be very frustrating, very time-consuming, and very difficult to understand. And so we want to make sure that if anyone has questions about this process or any application that's been made recently or that's maybe forthcoming in future months or even years, always feel free to reach out to our office, and we'll certainly help everyone understand what we can and cannot do with respect to the applications.
Any other questions for Cody? I think that's all.
Thank you, Cody. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, council, I will move us right into our first presentation today, which is with Christian Simmons from Fort Worth Lab and our Chief Transformation Officer, and Kara Waddell, CEO of Child Care Associates, to discuss our Blue Ribbon Action Committee on childcare.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here just to kick things off for Kara. So as you know, the issue of childcare continues to emerge as something municipalities are a huge partner in tackling. It sits at the intersection of economic development, workforce development, and early education. In Fort Worth, we're blessed to have a community institution that's been invested in the issues facing young children and working parents for well over 50 years, Child Care Associates. And Kara Waddell is no stranger to most of you here at City Hall. I actually just met her today, but most of you already know her. So I was behind. But she's the president and CEO of Child Care Associates and entering year 10 of service. So she's joining us today to briefly update us on the Blue Ribbon Action Committee on childcare. The Action Committee was formed by our own Mayor Maddie Parker, Arlington Mayor Jim Ross, and then County Judge Glenn Whitley to form a cross-section of leaders to tune into the issues of childcare and see if we could get some bold things done. So Kara's here today to update us on where things are some 28 months later. So it's my pleasure to welcome Kara.
Thank you. Great, good to see everybody. Let's dive in just a little bit. Good to see everyone today. So as we've said, childcare, sometimes we used to think of childcare and think that's just for some families. And now I think we recognize more and more that childcare is an economic development issue, it is a workforce development issue, it is an education issue, it is an everybody issue. And it became even more clear, I think, with the issues facing COVID. Rob Kaplan convened from the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank at the time, brought together 30, 40 key leaders kind of from across different areas. Had a couple nonprofit people in the room, and you'd think I would have bribed them. But as they went around the room one by one and they said, name the one thing that you think we should focus on with some of these public dollars that were going to be coming as a result of some of the economic issues happening due to COVID. And more people began to say childcare, early education, childcare, early education. This is our time. This is our chance. And we were thrilled with that, but very quickly we were like, what are we going to do? And was thrilled that we were able to bring together a really great group of people, a different group of people than had kind of been in the room before across philanthropy, healthcare, banking, communications, government. And you'll notice that a lot of these are focused, we were focused on Tarrant County, Fort Worth, Arlington, and Tarrant County, but we also recognize that childcare doesn't neatly stay in our own county boundaries. And we did pull in a few people across the Dallas-Fort Worth region as well to help look at some of the issues. And so specifically, the Blue Ribbon Action Committee on Childcare was looking at bold, innovative, and cross-sector solutions in the area. And they focused in on 4 North Star priorities. I'm going to go what those are, and then you can ask me, Kara, what the heck did you actually get done? So the 4 North Star priorities. First was places and spaces. There are no bonding powers for early learning infrastructure. Schools, if they're building pre-K classrooms, yes. But for everyone else, there is no bonding power. So if you want an early learning facility, you rely on commerce through a commercial childcare infrastructure or the goodwill of our philanthropic community. And so this was a chance to look at our high-need neighborhoods and say, do we have high-quality infrastructure in high-need areas? A second was looking at the early educator workforce. You think K-12 teachers are hard? Man, a lot happened in this space with COVID, and this was a chance to really look and say what was happening with the early educator workforce. A sustainable cost model. Economists call childcare right now the perfect example of a market failure. And so we began to say, what can we begin to do right now to begin to get some of the numbers, not only to sustain childcare in a pilot, but also to have the numbers we need on the back end so that we can show what do you actually need to save childcare moving forward. And last is the mixed delivery. That sounds so nerdy and policy wonky. But what the heck, what does it mean to have a 0 to 5 early learning system? If all 3 and 4-year-olds are sequestered in schools, how do you sustain 0 to 3-year-olds in community-based settings? And that's something that we began to tackle as well. So, Kara, did we get anything done? Outcome area 1, expanding high-quality seats for infants and toddlers specifically, really looking in at that issue because that's the highest area of need in our high-need areas through public-private partnerships. So there are 6 facilities, I'll say, being built. We are in the MOU status. We have funds that have been made available. The city of Fort Worth, thank you very much, has allocated public funding. Tarrant County has allocated funding, as has Tarrant County College, as has the city of Arlington. And together, by pulling together your resources, we have the design phase happening to be able to get these up and off the ground. Very excited about it. Rayner, the ribbon cutting, hold me to it, should be in August. That's in District 11. We're very excited. This is actually a remodel of an existing facility. It's beautiful. It's on the riverfront. We've had so many offers through the years to sell this. I can't tell you. It is high quality land and everybody wants it for their beautiful apartments, and we are keeping it for children. We believe children deserve beautiful places too. And so we're excited to have that opening soon, but also thanks to this city council, we have the Stop 6 in District 5, a new facility. This is focusing in on early Head Start. This is public funding that we'll be able to draw down for some of our higher need families. This is not going to be competitive with childcare programs. This is going to enhance. These are going to be families that might not have been able to have even afforded childcare on their own, and this will enhance and make it possible for them. Also, the 2 Tarrant County colleges, Las Vegas Trail, coming soon, coming in the fall also, and then Arlington as well. So excited about that. You can see some of the numbers that are there as well. Outcome area 2, a sustainable cost model. So buckle down with me. You know, my master's in public administration can pay off. But this, the public dollars for childcare come to us in Texas through our local workforce board, where we happen to be the contractor that managed those dollars. So I know a lot about them. I know how they work, and I know where the little opportunities to do things differently with them. Did you know that we have 16,000 families in Tarrant County sitting on the wait list today, waiting for that assistance? And there's more to be added. We only serve about 12% of eligible families today. So as you're making your list for legislative session, let's remember that Texas could put additional dollars into that. So that's something that we're interested in. And that's support to individual families. That's important. But in addition, what we're finding is that in addition, while support to individual families to afford childcare is important, we're realizing that the program, this has little, here we go, look, there's okay, sorry, there's the 3 different pieces. It's very clever, didn't know it was gonna do that. Those are the 3 different pieces. But for the individual program, what we're finding is that the program can't afford to exist. That the vouchers alone, the payments coming from families or even the government support, those dollars are not enough to keep that program afloat. Mayor came with us to go visit a program in Stop 6, and they said, without this pilot contract, I would have closed my doors. The other thing that this pilot contract has done is allowed them to pay what they were, I think they said $11.75 was what they were paying previously. They're now paying their teachers $18 an hour. Now, $18 an hour is not even what they say we probably should be trying to pay people in this profession, but we're able to enhance what families are able to pay and create a high-quality program in a high-need area. And this is beginning to get the economic numbers in this. So we've been partnering. We've not been doing this alone. Oh, look, there's the plus sign. We've not been doing this alone. Rice University, Texas Policy Lab, their lead economist has been coming down and interviewing, sitting down with the 19 childcare providers in our community and getting their numbers so that when policymakers ask us, what do you need? What are the actual numbers? We have it, and the economists know what's actually needed. This isn't only local attention. We've also gotten a lot of national attention on this as well. The Dallas Federal Reserve Bank is asking, what can we do? Who do we need to convene to get attention outside of the state of Texas as well? So more to come, but we really appreciate, we were able to take Mike Morath from the Texas Education Agency, the head of Chair Daniel from the Texas Workforce Commission also came out, and we were able to show them how their 2 state agencies working in separate ways, how hard it is to make those programs work together at the community level. And so, that's what these kind of programs allow us to do, is to say, can you see why you need to listen to us and help make a few of these changes possible? So that's one piece. Another outcome area is in the area of the early educator workforce. It's a tough problem when Buc-ee's outperforms childcare on its pay and benefits, and that's what's happening today. And so when people ask me, what are we going to do about early educators, Kara? They're turning over faster, 40, 50% in general. Ask me, we hire them. I've got 4 cohorts. I'm going to be hiring 60 to 80 infant toddler teachers between now and September, and we're training all of them before they enter a classroom to be with anyone's child. They're going through a 4-month intensive training cohort. So I know how tough it is out there with this. So what are we going to do? We can do nothing without high-quality educators. So we don't know today, if you ask anyone in higher education, you ask anyone in childcare, and you say, Kara, how many early educators do we need for Tarrant County? How many do we need in North Texas? Nobody knows. How many do we have? Nobody knows. How many degrees do we need? What are the credentials? How many credentials do we need? Nobody knows. So we're going to start with a landmark study. We're very excited to have the Prenatal to 3 Policy Center, really the groundbreaking policy center nationally, is going to be partnering with us, thanks to the Morris Foundation, Communities Foundation of Texas, for helping make this happen. Now, anybody of you goes, that doesn't really seem like an outcome, Kara. That seems like a study. You're right. It's a study. But coming very soon is a landmark announcement of an initiative that's a 50-50 partnership with Child Care Associates and a major Texas university system for a new center for the early educator that'll be featured here. And it's not a degree program. It's not professional development. It's going to be a hub to create the workforce that we need in North Texas so that we have the child care system that you need in order to have the economic development engine that you want in this community. So more to come. Last up is going to be pre-kindergarten. We have 3- and 4-year-olds sitting in our community-based childcare centers who could be drawing down pre-kindergarten dollars but aren't. Why are they not? Well, because their families need childcare hours. They need to work. They can't pick up their child at 2:30 or 3 or 3:30 when the school's let out. So they're in a childcare program in the community. And we're going, wait, we're leaving money in Austin? We should be figuring out how can we draw down the maximum. Every child who's 3 and 4 who qualifies for pre-kindergarten, we should be figuring out how do we at least draw those dollars down and put that into the mix. And so this is an idea that we've been working on for, gosh, almost 4 years, I believe, Catherine, to have a hub. Child Care Associates is trying to say, we'll figure it out. We know how to manage public dollars. We'll function as a hub, and we can partner with any school district or even a charter to be able to help draw down the public dollars that's needed, and not just pass money to childcare programs, but equip those programs to deliver high-quality early education, pass the resources that's needed, and hopefully in that same contract, ensure that those educators are making the wages that they need to make in order to be sustainable. So more to come, but this is something that we're very excited about, because this is not, you don't need to pass new legislation. We just need to be able to prove the concept. I know Mike Morath was just here and is excited to saying, what do you guys need to prove this concept in the state of Texas? So more to come there. This is a couple pictures from the conference, the convening that we just held in Fort Worth 2 weeks ago, Mayor, I believe. Momentum, we convened curated about 125 key leaders, governor's office, leaders from across 15 key regions. And we positioned 2 of the areas from the Blue Ribbon Action Committee. What are we going to do about the workforce? How do we get this community-based pre-kindergarten to work differently? Right now, we only have about maybe 1% of pre-kindergarten in the state of Texas is happening in community-based settings. Well, that's crazy. We're never going to be able to make childcare function in the state of Texas and be high quality if we forgot to bring working parents in the room when we designed pre-kindergarten in the state of Texas. And I think if a working mom was in the room, she would say, I'd like pre-kindergarten to also be available during the hours that I need it. And so these are ways, this convening is really looking at how do we design a 0 to 5 early learning system that not only works for schools, but that also works for working families in the state of Texas. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot and an update of what's been happening. And we're excited. I think there's some long-term, I call them long burning logs that we're going to leave on the fire that I think will continue to build results for us longer term. And welcome any questions or comments or remarks.
Any questions or comments for Kara? Macy?
Hi, Kara. Thank you for coming today.
Of course.
We go back to outcome number 1.
Yes.
So as you talk about the 6 centers, how long do you think it'll be for all to be up and running at capacity, kind of where you want them to be? What kind of time frame?
I know, don't you just love that? I need Mr. Rankin to join and tell us exactly. He knows when all the dollars need to be spent out. These are, they're high-quality modular builds. That's one reason why we know how they're going to be built. They're able to build off-site. You're able to expedite the process of getting them up and going. I've got the date, I didn't bring all of that with me, so I can follow that up. But I'm gonna say within 2 years, they are all gonna be open, operating, now full capacity. I've got 16,000 families sitting on the wait list, and so if I can't pull families off wait lists to serve them, we're trying to focus on serving some of our more at-risk children and families, and so that's a challenge. I know we're approaching the philanthropic community. We've applied for a couple of municipalities about CDBG funding as bridge funding, that if they qualify for this, can we provide a little patch 3 or 4 or 5 months that they could get some carryover funding until we can pull them off this long-term list. But it's a real challenge out there for families today.
Thank you.
Gina?
Kara, congratulations on the work you do, not only for the young children, but the families and the communities. I've got 2 questions for you.
Please.
Are you in any type of discussions with Dr. Ramsey over the possible closings that we know are inevitable, but not everybody knows where they are?
I've not been in personal discussions with her regarding the closings. I know I've been working with David Sines on partnership opportunities, and I know that there's infrastructure has been a conversation we've had with Fort Worth ISD through the last 20 years of partnering with them. So I do think it'll be a unique opportunity for the city to engage and say, if there is infrastructure that's available, how can you creatively utilize that in order for children and families? Will be something interesting to consider.
Well, I know for my district, I know that there will be 1 or 2 rumored to be closing, and in an area that you would be the perfect fit for. And so that's one reason why I was asking that. The other question, are you in communication with corporate leaders in terms of the topic of childcare on campus? Matt Rose was a big advocate of that. Are you in those kind of talks? Can you talk about it?
Clarification, do you mean on like a corporate campus? Great question. There's a lot of dialogue. I mean, all of a sudden, companies are in the picture as a legitimate, companies are not responsible to pay 100% of childcare. Government is not responsible to pay 100% of childcare. But I think we recognize that they carry a part of the puzzle. And companies more and more are coming to the table and saying, how is childcare a benefit that we should be considering for our employees? There are some companies that are saying we want to consider on-site. When they do a lot of surveys, what they learn from families is that a lot of families aren't really interested in on-site. Some are, some aren't, and they realize that there's a lot to learn about your employee base and the options that they want. And so we always encourage companies to pause. Don't just assume everybody's going to want to build a child care center and bring them on site. And also, it's really important to look at and I know you've been an outspoken advocate in the best of ways for our community-based child care programs. And so it's really good. We have mapping, and we're more than glad to run for any company that wants to know where are the child care programs in our area, which ones are high quality, and we can show them. So if they want to be able to partner with existing programs in the area, that's another really important thing as well, is to support our existing small businesses that are operating in those areas. But yes, we talk to a lot of companies that are interested in looking at it. There also are corporate opportunities to partner. It's kind of overwhelming. I actually had the U.S. Chamber of Commerce reach out and talk to me about it, and I'm like, aren't there professional consultants who do this, across the country? So there's a great deal of interest now at the corporate level in thinking through it. And I know the Texas A&M conversations downtown, there's beginning to be bubbling up interest in saying a major barrier to workforce is childcare. And so what are we going to do as a community is something that I think most companies, larger companies are asking today. And then certainly small businesses are recognizing what can I do as well.
And my last question, where did you all go in my district in Stop 6? I'm curious. You took, what school did you all visit in Stop 6?
Oh, I got it written down. It's on the slide, isn't it?
Sunrise.
Sunrise, thank you. I forgot. Sunrise Early Learnings. It's right down the street.
My mom taught there, so.
Did she really?
Kindergarten.
It's such an amazing facility, and the turnover that we described is not happening there. Those people are very committed. It's a lovely facility.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Questions from council? Anyone else? No. Kara, thank you so much for all your hard work. We're very lucky to have you. One thing I'll point out on the mixed delivery piece, just sort of for those of you who don't play in this sandboxes often, it's really simple. A lot of school districts across the state of Texas, when they were able to, especially with their bond elections, expanding space in classrooms, they built pre-K classrooms. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's at the detriment of community-based care, because when you open a 3 or 4-year-old classroom, you're drawing kids away from a community-based center, And they can't operate just on 0 to 3-year-olds. And so they end up shutting down long-term. And the point that Kara is trying to make is convincing our larger districts, you can draw down, what is it, $3,000 per student, roughly, in addition to what they pay. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities here in Fort Worth for childcare. It's important to us as an employer also, and to make sure you have the right level of benefit for our workforce. And I don't think we're the only public sector employer in Fort Worth right now that's really grappling with what do they do with childcare benefits. And to Kara's point, whether it's on-site, dependent care accounts, which we do have in the city of Fort Worth, these are all things we need to be asking as it becomes harder and harder to make sure you're attracting and retaining your top talent in the city of Fort Worth. Thank you, Kara. Appreciate you. Next up, along these same lines, is a briefing on the child care facility tax exemption, and Christiane Simmons is going to walk us through this.
I'm back. Okay. Yes, same vein. Today, we're going to talk about a new opportunity that we have as a municipality to provide a property tax exemption to childcare facilities and what the eligibility looks like. And so let's get started. So this is, like I said, a new opportunity made possible by the passage of Senate Bill 1145. It was made effective on January 1 of 2024 following the widespread approval of Proposition 2 in November. And so the Senate bill added some eligibility requirements depending on who you are. So as the taxing entity, which is us, we'd be required to adopt an exemption before July 1. And the exemption itself can be no less than 50%, but up to 100% of the property's taxable value. And then, as you know, sometimes the property owner might be leasing to a child care provider. And so if you're a property owner leasing to a child care provider, or if you're just a property owner that is a child care provider, the exemption only applies to the portion of your property that you're using for child care. If you're a home-based provider, you can't claim both a residence homestead exemption and a child care exemption, so those two things do not stack. And so you'll see later in the presentation, we don't really have homes in our number, but we sort of know what the fiscal impact would be if people decided to choose the child care exemption over the homestead. And then if it's a landlord that's claiming the exemption, so if you're leasing to a child care facility, you have to provide sort of an affidavit to the appraisal district that you'll pass the savings along to the tenant, either through a monthly or annual credit to their rent. So that's on the landlord to do that. And then if you're the child care provider, you have to be a licensed child care facility. And then the next two is sort of where we get a lot of narrowing in the bill as far as who's eligible for this property tax exemption. So the child care facility has to be a participant in the Rising Star program, and they have to have at least 20% of the children of their facility enrolled in the child care services program. That means 20% of their enrollees have to be subsidized through that program at any given time. And so we'll walk through sort of how that changed the eligibility, which I think a lot of people, maybe voting for Proposition 2 were like, yeah, childcare relief for everyone, but that's not how the bill worked out. So this is 338 estimated child care locations. This data is from Health and Human Services and Child Care Associates. So this includes registered homes, which are not eligible under the bill, licensed home and licensed centers. However, once you apply those eligibility requirements that I just talked about with the Texas Rising Star program participation and the 20% of subsidized enrollees, you see that we go from 338 to 66. And then the next layer of data analysis that we did in the lab was to take those 66 and say, okay, well, who already has exemptions, either for being a charitable organization or a religious organization. And so you can see that we lost about 15 million in estimated appraised value that we'd pull back because people already had exemptions that, again, they can't stack. So we end up with 54 eligible child care locations that meet the eligibility of Senate Bill 1145 and don't have any existing exemptions. And so when we talk about those, we're talking about 29.2 million on the roll, which estimates revenue loss at 100% exemption of about $200,000 to the general fund tax revenue. And this is just an example of one of our child care facilities. This person is a leased child care facility. So in this case, we're just sort of quoting the language, for this person, their property owner would have to apply and then submit that affidavit of, I'm passing along the savings to you.
Christiane, how would we, I appreciate that they'll submit an affidavit, but is there any mechanism, or as you've gone through this, for us to verify, or is there an annual annual requirement that they continue to show us that they're passing that on?
So I think that verification of eligibility and continuation is on the appraisal district. And I think once, I'm looking at legal, but once you have the exemption, you have the exemption, yeah. Does that answer your question? You want to keep going? Okay.
So we're depending on the appraisal district to verify this annually? I mean, because if they're renting, they could be a short term or even maybe the lease is up. And so if we're giving that exemption, what protection do we have to ensure two things? One, that it continues to operate as a childcare facility, a qualifying childcare facility, I think is important. And then two, that they are actually passing that savings on to their tenant. I would like to believe that someone wouldn't falsify an affidavit or that people would do the right things, but I think that's not always the case. And so how would we address those two things?
Yeah, I think on the first question, perhaps since this is a new exemption, maybe we could introduce some mechanism at the local level for, checking the role in the parcels and maybe how they've changed year over year. As far as the enforcement, I think that's just still up in the air. I'm looking at legal in case they have something they want to say about what the municipality's role might be in that. You're right that the bill only really talks about the affidavit and the enforcement on the appraisal district side.
Ellen's job to fix, actually.
When it comes to the annual affidavit, I think we can coordinate with the assessor collector since they collect the taxes for us and coordinate to make sure that they're passing that information along to us so that we could double check. But I don't know that we have a mechanism. We are scheduled to meet with the appraisal assessor collector in the near future on another issue, so we can talk to them about this as well.
I would appreciate if y'all could come back with some proposals on how we would do that.
Yep, we can do that.
So, real quick, Dennis or Christian, you mentioned a conversation with the tax appraiser collector. We span 5 counties. We have a significant number of people in Denton County. Have we had similar conversation with Denton CAD?
So you want to take it? That's fine.
Asking specifically for my constituents.
So the assessor collector, all of our assessing and collecting is done by Tarrant County under contract. So all the counties, we actually have, Wendy? Is it Wendy, our assessor collector? Our assessor collector for Tarrant County does all the collections throughout the city in all counties. So when we coordinate with that office on the back end, how do we make sure the pass-through is occurring? We just have one spot to touch. On the individual appraisal districts, there will be a filing in each county, and we have actually been in contact with those counties because with a new exception coming online, the timing's a little weird. Technically, normally the deadline to file for an exemption is the end of April, which is today. But the appraisal districts, which is the other part, can extend that. So we've reached out to all of them to ask to make sure they have the extension. So we are coordinating with all of the counties on the exemption side with the appraisal district.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Wow. Okay.
Gina, go ahead. Sorry,
Oh, go ahead. Mhm.
I'm just going to pose this question because Elizabeth brought in her cynical point of view here. So I get, it's a great question, really hadn't thought about that. But it makes me wonder, staff, in terms of how childcare providers were notified, if they had to be, or do they just need to check the federal registry every week like crazy people? Or do you even know?
We have not made any official notification. I believe Child Care Associates has been in contact with their list of child care providers, letting them know that, the different cities and counties were taking up this issue. I'm looking at Catherine, she's nodding her head. So not through the municipality, but through Child Care Associates, they've been notified that this was coming.
And the deadline, I think, is tomorrow?
April, I think technically today, April 30th.
Okay.
For them to apply. So some were encouraged to go ahead and apply, so they'd just be in the queue if the county or the city took up this exemption. And then we have the word from Tarrant Appraisal District, at least, that they're extending that deadline for application by 60 days upon council's taking up of the issue.
Well, I want to thank Councilmember Beck for raising the question about the property owner relationship with the leasee, because I really hadn't thought that far. So I like the idea of extending by 60 days so that we can do our job as, you know,
Notify them,
stewards
yeah.
to let people know.
Yeah.
Not cynical, just critical.
Since you're not dealing with that many childcare facilities, presumably you could spot check over the year and contact a few that are leasing space to say, did you receive a discount or a pass-through that was supposed to be made available under the ordinance?
Yeah, I
Just
think
want to
that's
make
right.
sure if they're, we're giving this benefit, that it's reaching the intended subject, that's all.
Go back to the map on 300 plus, the one right before that. So 338, they go to the next one. That's not good. You want all 338 on TRS for quality standards. And so there's a presumption in the way the law was passed that rather than just giving carte blanche every childcare facility a property tax exemption, you're putting additional incentive in place for them to enter into TRS and contract appropriately to go work through from 2 stars to 4 stars. So maybe we work on that collectively. It may not happen overnight, of course, but you want as many of your childcare providers to be high quality as possible.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, and so as I mentioned, the municipality, we can't do less than 50%, so we just thought we'd show 50, 75, 100, how that relates to the revenue loss on this year's tax rate, and then how that translates to the annual tax or rent relief to the average provider. So at the 100% exemption level, for instance, we'd see a revenue loss in the general fund of approximately $200,000, which translates to an annual relief of $3,641 off the tax bill for that average child care provider. And you can see the other levels there.
Quick question, is this going to be an annual thing that we have to review, or is there a time frame that this isn't effective?
I think once we adopt it, we've adopted it, right? Yes.
Okay.
So,
I was
we
under
could
the impression that
reconsider, we could reconsider as part of the budget process, and then I guess if the legislature makes changes, we can bring those back and, if they expand eligibility and things, but I think it'd be part of, just as we're going to revisit like the over 65 disabled exemption as part of the budget process, we could look at this one every year too, but you don't have to re-adopt it every year.
Okay. I
Denise?
guess my thought process on it is if, we adopted 100% this year and we are struggle to monitor, or people are not in compliance, is there a way to go back the following year and unadopt it? Or
Yes, I
change
think
it to
so.
75% or change it to 50, whatever, just to see if we can make it work and figure out what those nuances are that we need to fix.
Yes, yep, we could do that. Yeah, good question. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the funny timing. So we've worked with appraisal districts to extend the application deadline for 60 days. Like I said, we have the okay from Tarrant on that, and we're working with the others, which, there's a couple of other license centers that fall into the bounds of the other appraisal districts. But you have to take this up before June 30th. We've actually scheduled it for May 14th meeting, so you'll hear this for consideration in a couple of weeks. But we have time to do any follow-ups before that, so we can talk about some of the audit mechanisms and things. I'm happy to send a follow-up on that. Any other questions on this?
Yeah, Charlie.
I just have one. So that $200,000 revenue loss, if the goal is to make childcare more affordable, I think maybe that's what Elizabeth was going to, as far as the tenants, but as far as the actual family, how do we, if it's going to come off the tax rolls, and then of course, taxpayers paying for that. So how do we make sure that families are actually benefiting from it, not just that childcare facility, it just increases their bottom line, you know what I mean? So if it's supposed to improve their quality of life.
I can speak to that. Unfortunately, a lot of these facilities don't have a bottom line. I mean, they are struggling to really keep the lights on and the doors open. And so this is a very small incremental change in the state of Texas. Back to Kara's presentation on what the business model looks like, it is incredibly broken. And the ones that won't qualify are the for-profit providers that are probably much more able to bankroll. Those that are going to qualify here are, the examples like where my kids went to school. I mean, they probably might pass it through in less electric bill burden or be able to pay their teachers $1 or $2 more per hour. But it's not the type of industry you get in to make a lot of money, unfortunately. So, but it's a good question, right?
Yep.
Anyone else? No? Thank you, Christiane.
Thank
Appreciate you. So I guess before, no issues in bringing this back mid-May is when you're kind of May 14th.
May
This will be on the
14th.
agenda. Okay.
Yep, council agenda.
Yes,
for
please, Jared.
consideration.
I just put 2 cents in. I'm glad we discussed this. I'm for 100%.
Thank you. My iPad just died. What's the next item? I'm so sorry. It's a, thank you, David. Presentation on Economic Development Program Agreement with ITS Logistics and Sheree Gordon. Thank you. There it is, it's alive.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this presentation today is to discuss a proposed 380 agreement with ITS Logistics. ITS Logistics is a supply chain logistics and technology company, a premier third-party company that provides supply chain solutions. They're number 21 in North America, number 11 in drayage. They're a fastest growing company. Today, they have a location that's up in the North Point area, kind of where we have Ariat and the Dollar Store General Distribution Center, so up north of the BNSF Intermodal Logistics Facility. It's an over 1 million square foot distribution center that we have with ITS Logistics today. Nationwide, they have 800 employees, annual revenue over $1 billion. Again, as mentioned, a fastest growing company, number 1751 on the Inc. 5000, and that existing presence in Fort Worth that came in 2022. They have a new proposed center for operations and technology that would be at the 3rd floor at 1 West 7th. So this would be the location for the project. And that project overview, they're seeking this new location for office operations and service support, mainly to staff up for a offering they have called Container AI, which is a AI cutting-edge container management and visibility platform. So it's a location to accommodate 339 employees with average salaries of over $100,000. The capital investment is up to $1 million in tenant improvements, and they do have multiple competing locations. The commitment is to lease at least 15,000 square feet of office space before 6/30/2024 with that proposed minimum capital investment. And then the required minimum new full-time jobs would be 250 full-time jobs by December 31st, 2027. With that 100,000 minimum average annual salary. But in discussions with the company, we do see the potential of that being higher. And then we have the 15% construction cost to be EF companies. And the proposed incentive terms, this is a company that's in our target area of mobility. And with the average salaries and the jobs, we're proposing a 380 agreement for grants over 3 years, not to exceed $847,500 total. So it's based on $2,500 per full-time equivalent with minimum wages of $100,000. And they would do over 3 years, so they're expecting 100 of the jobs, which would be a $250,000 payout by March 31st, 2026. 100 jobs or 250 by 2027, and then the balance in 2028. Their commitment is at least 50 of those jobs in 2028, but again, this is up to the 339 total. Those jobs must be maintained for a minimum of 3 years at the required average salary, and there is clawback provision if they do not meet those requirements to recapture the grant funds on a default. So that development summary, 15,000 square foot lease, million in tenant improvements, but creating 250 or up to 339 total jobs, $100,000 in wages, and doing a 3-year economic development grant agreement to bring this to Fort Worth. Our recommended next steps is to enter into that agreement and to go forward with MNC on the May 14th agenda.
I like everything I hear. But I do have a couple of questions. I hate to use the word but, you know, ranked as number 1, you know, there's a good chance that they'll meet incentives, meet requirements sooner. And I know we've got clawback provisions in. Do we have incentives if they meet them sooner, or if the salaries go even higher?
We do not, but it'll be a great advantage if it does.
Well, it's ranked as number 1. I'm very optimistic. The real question I have is, what the heck is Container AI? when I hear AI, I think what AI is, but what is that?
No, so this is a transportation management system, a TMS, so it has to do with your freight movement and container movement throughout the US. And this is using artificial intelligence to optimize that movement and to move it most efficiently.
Thank you, ma'am. I knew you would have all of my questions.
Thank you.
I just want to let my colleagues know, I support this, and in large part because of the location where it's going, as we work to reimagine what West 7th looks like, to have the types of businesses, the restaurants that we want, we have to have the people going to those, and that really takes daytime traffic as well. And so making sure that those buildings are fully staffed, I think, is really important to help support some of the positive changes that the folks at now Artisan Circle are working to make. And we want to keep terrace coming back. We want to keep it around, and so that's how we do that, is make sure that they've got folks there to patronize it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council, that's the last of the agenda items on our work session agenda. Do we have any future agenda items before we move into our special called work session on the budget? Gina?
I even wrote mine down. I'm going to do the one involving children first while Kara is here, because I know I can reach out for help. I'd like for staff to give some type of report or study on academic achievement in the range from 0 to 3 or 0 to 5, whatever it is, as it pertains to private childcare providers as opposed to traditional licensed. I'm trying to see what's happening with the children who don't have benefit of childcare and associates. And so I first got into this discussion before COVID and found out that a lot of the providers who were somewhat disenfranchised, to use their term, didn't have the certifications that were needed. And so I've seen improvement there, but we kind of need to know how our children are doing, no matter where they're receiving care from. And Mayor, I expect you to help me clean that language up, but I think you know what I'm getting at. We really do need to know how these kids are being taught. And please don't tell my mom I said kids, children. So that's one. The other, I know we're working on the city website. If you look at building standards, board, commission, whatever it is, you have to call to get information on what a case is about. It's always been that way. And so I have the question, will all boards and commissions' agenda be searchable? And so that's for the city secretary's office. And finally, last one, we know how code compliance conducts trainings for multifamily operators. Well, I've been getting quite a few complaints about trash outside CVS, Walgreens, and we always have to scare off panhandlers in every part of town. And so I'd like to know if there's a way that code compliance can do a similar training for retail operators when it comes to their responsibilities with trash. Now, in Meadowbrook, the operator of the CVS at Meadowbrook and Hanley told a complaining citizen, well, I don't have enough people to go pick up trash. And so I did my drive-by and I took pictures of trash. Apparently she scared them enough and they picked it up. But I don't know if code compliance is working with them to let them know. So those are my three things that make me go, That's all.
Thank you. Charlie?
So, David, you may have to help me out with this one, but this will go along with Mayor Pro Tem's, so if we need to combine them, that's absolutely fine. Just a report or a presentation that we can go out and give our business owners and our residents on the difference between private residential and private commercial, and if there is a discernible difference, and how we can make these absentee commercial owners, hold them accountable for these vacant buildings. We have it all the time where the police, unfortunately, they can't do anything because it's private property, so they can't run off these homeless camps, which I think is, you have somebody who wants to come and open a business, but then they see all these, the homeless folks that are living there, they're refusing the services, which again, you can't force them to, that's fine, but police can't tell them to go anywhere. That potential business owner says, oh, this must be a rundown area, so they go somewhere else. Again, if we are gonna lower our property taxes by bringing in the right businesses, then we need to hold these absentee commercial owners more accountable for these properties. And I know our code commercial guys are doing a fantastic job going out there. They do the cleanups eventually, and then they find them. But I think we talked about this last time too, about making more teeth behind those fines to where it actually hurts them. But just something we can go back to our property, our tenants in these shopping centers and say, listen, you have rights too, even though you don't own the property, you have rights to run people off if you need to, and here's how you can do it. So if that makes any sense at all. So.
Jared.
Thanks, Mayor. I have two. One, an IR on, maybe from legal, on what the city's, what's in the city's tool belt as it relates to squatting. We've had some challenges with that in our district, and so I think it'd be beneficial for the residents to know what's in the city's tool belt and what we're doing about that. Secondly, I think it's a good time to bring back maybe the conversation about STRs. One, just in terms of a general update of the performance of our ordinance, and second, just about the fines and the level of fines and how that's been going, and third, staffing levels for code compliance and how that's either impacting or benefiting the enforcement of the STR policy.
All right, are you done? Okay. We're going to call this the no fun in the house list. The first one I would like probably a presentation on our smoke shop regulations and how we compare to other cities. More importantly, I would also like staff, when they do that, to look at what, if anything, did other cities do ahead of. I imagine a lot of these smoke shops will potentially turn into dispensaries if the Texas legislature ever decides to legalize marijuana in the state. And so I'd like us to get out ahead of that. So I want to know what our regulations are, what other cities have done as they saw that looming in the legislature, so that if and when that does come to the city of Fort Worth, we're better prepared for what that looks like. And then how we can improve smoke shops just throughout the city. They seem to be proliferating. All right, second, bars. So as we sat in this meeting, I got an email from a resident about a bar that's hosting a frat fight night between different frats at TCU. Charlie, you cannot go. It's not a Marine brawl. It's actually an organized, I know. And so this is not the first time this has happened. It's happened in West 7th as well, and it's concerning. So I'd like legal to give us an IR on what state and local regulations we are in relation to whether it's licensed or unlicensed promoted fights, and what we can do as a city to help prevent those in bars. And then also, when it relates to bars, we had the IR on our different ordinances and how it relates to sound, but I really think we need to take it a step farther and look at what buffers look like and how we can better protect our neighborhoods from adjacent zoning properties popping up nuisance bar locations.
Jeanette?
Yeah.
So this would be an informal report. I've noticed that we get a lot of complaints in District 11 for semi-trucks and trailers parking in residential communities. What does the citation look like? I hear it's just easier to pay the fee than take it to a parking yard. And do we need to increase the fee or look into other measures to try to reduce this issue?
Anyone else have any future agenda items? Yes, Carlos.
I'm checking my notes here, and I may have requested this back in January, but I'm not sure. Want to know what policy the city of Fort Worth may have regarding designated delivery paths for drones. I think the city of Plano has done some work in that regard. So I'm just bringing that up again. Don't know if I've mentioned it before. Either way, I'd like to get some information.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? If not, I think meeting is adjourned. And we'll move into the budget workshop. Let me give 5 minutes. That's good.